Darth Vader's redemption is one of the most famous endings in film history. The mask comes off, the father saves the son, and for the first time we see Anakin Skywalker at peace. It's meant to be the perfect ending to the saga, but if you stop and think about it, there's one problem. Did he really deserve it? This is the man who slaughtered children, tortured prisoners, and spent decades enforcing tyranny across the galaxy. He was the face of fear, the right hand of the Emperor, and the nightmare of anyone who resisted the Empire. One last-minute act of redemption doesn't erase all of that, so why is he standing beside Yoda and Obi-Wan like an equal? The logic of the Force ghosts has always been shaky. Qui-Gon never fully appeared, Obi-Wan and Yoda trained for years, and Vader just unlocks the perk instantly. It feels less like justice and more like the Force playing favourites. And it raises an uncomfortable question. What are the actual rules here? Is redemption in Star Wars really that simple? One good deed at the end of your life and you get the ultimate spiritual reward. If that's the case, then villains like Maul or Ventress, who showed glimpses of humanity before their deaths, got a raw deal. And the clones who had no choice during Order 66, they never even had the option. But at the same time, the image of Anakin standing redeemed is undeniably powerful. It closes the circle, it gives Luke closure, and it delivers one of the most emotional finales in cinema. Maybe the point isn't fairness, maybe the point is myth. That's why fans are still debating it 40 years later. In this video, we're going to break down the morality of Anakin's redemption, why the Force ghost might not follow the rules we think, and whether Vader's ghost is a beautiful ending or proof that Star Wars lets its villains off too easy. At the end of Return of the Jedi, we see something that should feel triumphant. Anakin Skywalker finally redeemed, smiling as a Force ghost beside Yoda and Obi-Wan. It's meant to be closure, the idea that the prodigal son has returned, that even the darkest villain in cinema history can find light again. But if you actually stop and think about it, was that ending really earned? Did Darth Vader deserve to stand there, shoulder to shoulder with the two men he betrayed, after decades of committing atrocities? The list of Vader's crimes is longer than a Star Destroyer. He slaughtered children at the Jedi Temple without hesitation. He hunted survivors across the galaxy, dragging families into the Empire's iron grip. He tortured Han and Leia, cut off Luke's hand, and enforced a system of tyranny that killed billions. That's not just a few bad days at the office. That's a career of evil spanning 20 years. And yet with one act of redemption, we're supposed to believe the Force just lets it all slide. To be fair, Star Wars has always been about redemption. It's mythic, it's symbolic, it's designed to show that no one is ever truly gone. But even within that theme, Vader's sudden acceptance into Force ghost status raises questions. Obi-Wan spent years training and communing with Qui-Gon to learn that ability. Yoda mastered it after centuries of wisdom. And Vader just unlocks it like it's a hidden cheat code at the last second. Doesn't that feel like a narrative shortcut? The Clone Wars and other canon sources try to patch this up by suggesting it was Anakin's unique status as the chosen one that allowed him to manifest. That his sacrifice at the end was so profound, it transcended the usual rules. But that explanation almost makes it worse, because it implies the Force rewards raw destiny over moral accountability. As if the universe itself said, "You destroyed planets, but hey, prophecy is prophecy. Welcome to the Afterlife Club." What makes this even stranger is how uneven Force ghost logic feels across the saga. Qui-Gon, the man who discovered the technique, never even gets a body, just a voice. Meanwhile, Anakin gets a shiny young Hayden Christensen version without a scratch. That's not just redemption, that's a cosmic facelift. It feels less like justice and more like favoritism. And the morality of it all is messy. If redemption is as simple as one final good deed, then what does that mean for characters like Maul, who died in Obi-Wan's arms showing a flicker of remorse? Or Asajj Ventress, who found her own path away from the Sith but never got any mystical recognition? If Vader qualifies after everything he did, then why don't they? This also makes Luke's reaction worth examining. Luke looks up at his father's ghost with joy, but the audience is supposed to feel the same. Yet imagine being Leia, who was tortured by this man. Imagine being Obi-Wan, who watched his apprentice burn children alive. Would they smile so easily seeing him there, or would it feel like an insult? The more you pull at it, the more Return of the Jedi's ending looks like emotional convenience. It ties a neat bow on the Skywalker story, but it doesn't ask the hard questions about justice and consequence. The Force seems less like a spiritual balance and more like a forgiving parent who plays favourites with its gifted children. And maybe that's the core issue. Anakin's redemption is emotionally powerful, but morally hollow. The saga wanted catharsis, not fairness, and so it gave Vader the ultimate spiritual reward despite his crimes. That works in myth, but it leaves us wondering if the Force itself has standards at all. To understand whether Vader really deserved to be a Force ghost, we need to look at what the ability actually means. Becoming one with the Force isn't just about glowing blue and smiling at Ewok parties. It represents spiritual transcendence, harmony with the cosmic force, and the idea that death is not the end for those who have truly embraced balance. That's why it took Qui-Gon years of practice, why Yoda perfected it only after a lifetime, and why Obi-Wan devoted his final years to learning it. It was never meant to be easy. So how does someone like Vader, a man who spent decades immersed in hate, suddenly jump to the front of the line? The expanded universe once suggested that only Jedi who were at peace could achieve it. And yet Vader, who had spent years choking subordinates for failure, suddenly reaches serenity in one act of sacrifice. If that's the rule, then the bar is so low that redemption becomes almost meaningless. Some fans argue that this is the ultimate message of Star Wars, that no matter how far someone falls, they can always come back. And sure, that's a powerful theme. But should forgiveness really be that instant? In real life, actions have consequences. You can't undo decades of harm with one good deed. If Vader's story is supposed to inspire hope, it also risks cheapening the weight of his sins. There's also the question of fairness to other characters. Count Dooku was a fallen Jedi who may have doubted the Sith in his final moments. No Force ghost for him. Maul lived a tortured life of rage. But in his final scene, he acknowledged the hope of the Chosen One. No ghost for him either. Yet Vader, who has arguably the worst kill count of all, gets the reward because his son happened to be there to witness it. It feels like narrative bias more than cosmic justice. And what about the clones who carried out Order 66? Most of them had no choice, controlled by chips, but they never get any spiritual recognition. Meanwhile, the guy who ordered the slaughter gets a blue holographic halo. The Force seems awfully selective in who it lets through the gate. The mechanics of the Force also muddy things. George Lucas himself suggested that becoming a ghost wasn't about morality, but about knowledge. Qui-Gon discovered the path, passed it to Yoda, then to Obi-Wan, and eventually to Anakin. But if it's about knowledge, how did Anakin learn it? Did the Force itself just gift it to him as a reward? That undermines the idea of training and turns it into cosmic favoritism again. The irony is that this might have been intentional. Lucas always leaned into mythological storytelling, and myth doesn't follow fairness. In myth, the son who returns at the last second often gets restored. The villain who shows one moment of compassion can be saved. It's poetic, but it's not consistent. The question is whether that works in a franchise that asks us to take its morality seriously. And from a story perspective, it does create a powerful emotional payoff. Seeing Anakin restored, standing beside Obi-Wan and Yoda, is a visual symbol of the saga coming full circle. The boy who fell returns to the light. The father who failed redeems himself through his son. It feels complete, even if it doesn't make sense logically. That tension between emotion and morality is what makes this debate so enduring. Was the ghost a reward for Anakin, or was it a gift to Luke? Did the Force honour Vader, or did it simply give Luke the closure he needed? If it's the latter, then maybe it doesn't matter whether he deserved it. So where does this leave us? On one hand, Anakin's ghost is iconic, the emotional heart of Return of the Jedi. On the other hand, it's messy, inconsistent, and possibly unfair. Whether he deserved it depends on whether you see Star Wars as myth or morality tale. And those two lenses give you very different answers. If you see it as myth, then yes, Vader's redemption works. Myths are about symbols, not balance sheets. The villain redeemed at the last moment, the father saved by his son, the cycle of darkness broken. It's archetypal, and it fits with the tradition of stories stretching back to ancient legends. In that sense, Anakin's ghost is perfect, because it's not about fairness, it's about mythic closure. But if you see it as morality tale, the cracks show. In a moral framework, redemption is earned, not handed out. Actions have consequences, and forgiveness requires more than one heroic moment. Anakin killed children, destroyed lives, and enforced tyranny for decades. If he gets the same afterlife reward as Yoda, who dedicated 900 years to wisdom and service, then what does that say about justice in this galaxy? This is where fan debates get interesting. Some argue that Vader's ghost isn't about forgiveness at all, it's about balance. That in killing Palpatine, he restored the balance of the Force, and thus was allowed transcendence. But even that feels flimsy, because balance shouldn't mean ignoring accountability. Balance is about harmony, not loopholes. Others suggest that the ghost wasn't for Vader, it was for Luke. That the Force allowed it because Luke needed closure, because seeing his father redeemed gave him the strength to carry on. That interpretation makes sense emotionally, but it turns the Force into a narrative device instead of a consistent spiritual system. It becomes whatever the story needs it to be. There's also the uncomfortable question of optics. By showing Vader as a peaceful ghost, the film risks sanitizing him. Younger fans might remember him less as a genocidal war criminal, and more as a tragic dad who got a happy ending. That softens the impact of his villainy, and it makes Star Wars look like it gives its worst monsters a free pass, as long as they smile at the finish line. Compare this to how other franchises handle redemption. In Game of Thrones, Jaime Lannister clawed his way back toward honour, but still died with unresolved sins. In Avatar, Zuko worked tirelessly to earn trust, facing rejection at every step. Vader skips all that. He gets one sacrificial moment and an instant spiritual upgrade. That's not a redemption arc. That's narrative fast-tracking. And yet, the emotional impact can't be denied. People cried in theatres seeing Anakin restored. The image of father and son united is one of the most powerful in the saga. It's why the debate persists, because the scene works on a gut level, even while it crumbles under scrutiny. That duality is what makes Star Wars so fascinating. It's not neat, it's not consistent, it's a messy myth wrapped in a morality tale. And Vader's ghost sits at the centre of that mess, forcing us to ask whether closure should come at the cost of justice. So did Vader deserve to be a Force ghost? The myth says yes, the morality says no. And maybe the real answer is that the Force itself doesn't care about rules. It only cares about the story.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that share button. My main channel is Critical Analysis Hub, where I post Star Wars content about the movies. My secondary channel is Critical Analysis Hub Plus, where I focus on the shows of Star Wars. And my third channel is Critical Analysis Hub XP, where I post comic books. Be sure to take a moment and check them out. Thanks, and may the Force be with you.